Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Polo Reef and Champion Lighting and Supply. Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to the show. My name is Keith, and my co-host Dong is having some technical difficulties. Hopefully, he can make it back really soon. He's got a new laptop and a new phone, and he can't get them to work. So he's furiously trying to figure it all out on his end, and I guess that's what happens when you got Windows devices. I don't know. I'm a big Mac fan myself, and I know it could be frustrating. But hopefully Don will be able to get on to the stream very, very soon. But we're really looking forward to this. This is going to be an awesome show tonight. We've got quite the esteemed panel lined up of OG reefers. And if you add up their years of experience, I believe it would be well over 100 years in the hobby. So tonight, this is going to be a rare opportunity to take in some knowledge from a very talented group of reef keepers. On the panel, we have Steve Weast, we have Joe Muscat, we've got Joe Berger, and we've got Greg Carroll. They're sitting back in the green room right now waiting for me to bring them on. But before we do that, I want to thank our sponsors who are really, really important. Very much appreciate their support. Polo Reef. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's latest YouTube videos. The Polo team takes on a massive month building a new deep water rockscape, adding giant coral colonies and welcoming rare fish and clams. ICP test results reveal toxic metals, brown jelly disease, oh geez, and even working with a scientist from Yale. And just as things settle, a rock slide, whoa, in the 17,000-gallon tank shakes things up. Make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. Champion Lighting and Supply. Todd and the crew will be at the Boston Reefers Frags Giving event on Saturday, November 8th at Topsfield, Massachusetts. The fairgrounds there. Go visit them at the show. Say hello. It's going to be an awesome show. I've been to the show. I've been to the show a couple of times. They're going to have speakers. Chris Meckley is going to be speaking. I have other speakers. They have a phytoplankton workshop. I've never heard of one of those. So that's going to be pretty cool. Over 25 coral vendors. I'm going to be one of those coral vendors. It's the only show that I sell frags at. I don't sell them online anymore. So this is the only opportunity if you want to buy any of my frags to go to this show. There's going to be raffles, door prizes, and food trucks. So to get more information and to purchase tickets, visit bostonreefers.org. And you don't have to be a member of the Boston Reefer Society to attend. But, hey, I think it's a pretty cheap annual fee to be a member. So what the hell? Go sign up while you're at it. All right, let me bring on the panel here. So we've got Joe. What's happening, Joe Muscat? What's going on there, dude?
Thank you for having me again, Keith.
We got Joe Berger.
Keith, happy to be here.
Steve Weast.
Yeah, thanks for making us feel so young with that intro there.
Yeah, over 100 plus years of experience. Isn't that crazy when you think about it? Like how many years of experience we have on this stream that between all of us, man, this is going to be pretty cool. I see we have a bunch of people out there in the chat. Hello to everybody out there that's watching. I think, what we were talking about before with the show is that, we have some questions in our back pocket, Dong and I, but I think this is really more of a free form kind of discussion. So I encourage you guys to chime in with anything that you want to talk about if we're kind of missing a topic. Questions from the viewers would certainly be encouraged. And I think speaking of viewer questions, I wanted to kick it off, guys, with a question that came to me via email, and it was from a viewer of the show, Tyler Stanton, and I think this is a great way to start the show. And so his question is all about keeping it simple. And I don't know if everybody on the panel sees that they're in terms of keeping it simple in terms of reef keeping, but so that was his question: keeping it simple in terms of taking care of a reef tank. Do you subscribe to that theory? And if so, how do you define keeping it simple? Does it mean you're not constantly changing methods? Does it mean you're using minimal equipment? Are you avoiding automation? Potential tripwires that could screw things up? Do you not use a lot of supplements or additives? Is it any one of those, a combination of it? I don't know. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I think that keeping it simple is it's the way to go. Listen, I've always advocated that you don't need to do a lot to be successful. You just need to be consistent in what you do, observe what's happening, and pick a few tried and true methods and then stick with it. If you're new or you're an intermediate and you're worried about things, there's a lot of easy ways to do it, and it's exactly by keeping it simple. If you're advanced and you're trying to do other things, you keep that simple base as what you're doing, and then from there you just you can add other things into it. I have lots of automation, but I didn't start with that, and I do trace elements, and I didn't start with any of that stuff. But do you need any of that? You don't need any of that. I have a really successful tank from 2003 that looked great, and I just did water changes on that, and added a couple little calcium or alkalinity if it got out of whack. But other than that, that's all I was doing, making sure I've got light and water and good, and that's it. So I think, keeping it simple is really the best way to start.
I mean, I do agree. I do agree with Joe 100% because I've been saying that keeping it simple is the way to go. Most of us, when we get in trouble is because we complicate things ourselves. We are chasing numbers, and now with ICPs and dosing all these minor trace elements, half the time is getting people in trouble. And stop looking at other people's tanks that have been, up and running for 4, 5, 6 years, and you want to have your tank looking like that after a year that you're being in the hobby. And the most importantly is that you need to be patient, with keeping it simple. And like Joe said, water changes is you could have a successful tank with just doing water changes without worrying about dosing anything, using a good salt and water changes. And then if you want to get into the hobby where you want to, let's say, have your manganese up to par, being that it's being, precipitating in your tank so quickly. I mean, what is really the biggest success of having that and chasing that? Keeping it simple, good pH, good salt, water changes, change your stock, clean your skimmers, maintain temperature, have a good light, change your light bulbs if you have halides and T5s like myself versus LEDs, and just sit back and watch.
Yeah, I have to agree with the Joes. I've always told people this hobby is as hard as you want to make it. And if you want to get complicated and so forth, that's entirely up to you. But understand it's not necessary. I try to do things really easy. I mean, my whole filtration system consists of a skimmer and a calcium reactor for supplements. I like to be hands-off with a reef as far as really only touch it on the weekends. I use auto feeders, so some things are automated, but not to the extent that others, are. I just try to stay as hands-off as possible. It's to me, it's just easier that way. And the stability, I think, is really key, when you don't mess with it all the time.
That's it, right? Keep your hands out of the tank, man. Stop. People, I'm like, just dude, stop doing that. You don't need stop.
Yep.
You don't need to keep doing that. Keep your hands out of the tank. Just give it time.
What about you, Steve?
We shouldn't, for fear of our coming off as old guys yelling at clouds here, like we're technophobes or anything like that. I'm often accused of being a technophobe, but I'll embrace any technology as long as I show that it has a advantage to the system. And there's very few. Filter roller, maybe, I think that's been an advantage that I employ now that I didn't back in the day. But past that, it worked in the past, and I still do everything now that I did back then. But doesn't mean we don't embrace technology. It just has to have a reason for and show value in our systems. And so much of it today is not necessarily that, it's a nicety. And for a lot of folks, the complexity of their system is just as important to them as the display. They're more apt to show off their equipment than they are their tank. So, well, it's a different way to enjoy the hobby, I guess. So a little bit different from what we did back in our day. But I'll embrace anything that comes around that's new. I may not put it onto my system. It has to show true value.
Yeah, I started my reef keeping career, I think like a lot of us on the stream tonight, very, very simple setup, basic, because we didn't really have a lot of options as we have options now. I think the hobby has changed a lot in terms of what we have available to us in terms of how to run a reef tank. And it's great that people run reef tanks differently from one another. I think all of us to a certain degree run our tanks differently from one another. I think me personally, I started kind of experimenting a lot, a few years ago with, I kind of strayed away from what I was doing in terms of the simplistic approach. And I got a little bit more, in terms of more moving parts and a bit more complicated. And now I'm kind of back to what I was doing before in terms of trying to keep it simple, because the experimentation and the complexity just weren't working as I was hoping for. And, I just kind of went back to my roots.
So Keith, here's a follow-up a little bit on that topic. All of us here, we all started 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I think today's people entering the hobby have it so much harder than what we had it back then. Back then, what did we have? Marine Fish Monthly, FEMA. We didn't even really have clubs. We had a couple books. That's it. Today's new hobbyists, they are flooded with all kinds of different approaches, and they don't know where to go. For us back in the day, really, we had one or two choices and one direction to go. Today's new hobbyists entering the hobby, man, they got 10 million directions to go, and they end up picking and choosing off different roads, and it doesn't really work as well as it did for us back in the day. So,
yeah, well, because I think a lot of it is marketing, and a lot of misinformation at the same time, that, if you do this and you dose these elements, you don't need to do a water change. Okay. And if you do this, you don't need to do that. And then we're relying a lot on technology where we forgot how to add 1 + 1 = 2 because we use a calculator. Okay. And at some point, and I think we will all agree on this, this hobby will humble you if you don't, stay on top of it and pay attention to what you're doing and look at your tank. It will humble you. So which one is it that you're going to choose? And that's why I think we, being in the hobby for so long, we've learned, like you just said, Steve, where we didn't have the choices. So we've learned how to be successful with less.
correct.
Today, these kids are trying to be more successful, thinking that they have more and they're going to be more successful. And the truth is, you're not, because nature, is nature. We're still, chasing nature, how nature is and how corals grow and what is the surrounding, So I think simpler is better. And, when you get in trouble, you got to go back to your basis, right? So what do when we get in trouble? The first thing we do is we do a water change. Why do we rush to do a water change when we get in trouble? Because we are overdoing. That's what that's telling you. You're overdoing. You're trying to overdo things that you're now overdosing something, and now you got in trouble. Now your animals, got maybe infected. Now they're already starting to possibly die, and you're not going to see it until a month later, possibly. So I think, yes, technology today is great. It's nice to use it, but I think you still have to, as Keith said, you still need to, keep your hands involved and testing sometimes manually to make sure that your Trident is working properly, or your dozer, your computer is showing you the probes are accurate. Who does a probe that calibrated, as you should? Half of us won't, but we're reading what that probe is telling us. So.
Well, I got to go a different direction on that, Joe, because I look at today's hobbyist and see what they're doing. I think they're actually more successful than we were, because the learning curve is much shorter. I mean, they can acquire so much information. Sure, there's going to be hiccups, but their hiccups are going to happen much earlier than ours did, because I feel it was dragged out for us. Time and time again on my club meetings, we have people, we just this last month, we had a guy, and I asked him about his tank, and he's like, oh yeah, been in for a couple of months. And I says, okay, well, what kind of corals are you trying to keep? He's like, oh, it's all SPS. Who in like 3-4 months was keeping SPS back in our
Yeah, but is
no
he going to
one.
be?
I don't even think it was possible.
But he will not be successful in a couple of months growing SPS. They might live for a month, and
right?
then they
But
will.
that's true. But what I'm saying is their education is coming much quicker. They're going to have those failures and those things much quicker, because they're going at it from a whole different direction. They're going at it from, there's a wealth of knowledge, and they're able to see what works and what doesn't work. Where when we went through it, there wasn't that much knowledge. There was a lot less knowledge and a lot less information.
I agree with you there, because
It's true. It's true. We didn't have as much knowledge because, like you're saying, but we didn't have the corals available to us. We've learned through the years, we've learned diseases, and pests that we didn't know we had in our tanks.
Yep.
So, things like that. And I think part of the success as far as keeping certain corals, or let's say certain elements that, you need to have upkeep with today to, let's say, maintain a Ganipora where we couldn't keep him alive, right?
Right.
But I think as far as the basics of the hobby is still the same.
I think it's still the same. I think it's, but I think people getting into the hobby now definitely have. I feel like Greg said, it's easier. Like I remember being on like the SPS forums in like the early 2000s, and like nobody's having success. You know what I mean? Like I remember like starting threads and discussing water quality and discussing like how to get like water columns moving, and it was like the new way of talking about things. And now everybody's been doing that for 20 years, and that knowledge is out there everywhere. And I think that it allows people to get into the hobby easier. It allows them to get more success because there's more of this boost of everybody else being like, oh, this is how you do it. There's a lot more everything from more equipment to more knowledge to more help. I think they've got it easier than it was back then. I definitely think it is. I think we have more people who are successful. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, locally around me, it was like 8 people who kept like SPS, and now it's everywhere. And there's so many people with beautiful tanks. They might crash in a couple of years, and they might have to go and learn the things that we had to learn a while back as well. You know, everybody learns everything eventually. You know, all the things that you said, you know, when somebody starts in the first couple of months and they're like, I'm doing this, you can look at that and be like, oh, yeah, that guy's going to crash. You know, I mean, there's going to be a problem coming on that one. But, you know, everybody learns, but their ability to recover and ability to get there, I think, is faster and easier than it was back then. Yeah.
I do think there are a lot more tripwires today, though, and that's just because of the what we live in terms of social media and all the information that's available to people.
Too much choices, everything.
It's too much. And, you know, an example is, I don't know how many people, I lost count in terms of how many people reached out to me because I treated my tank with oxalic acid because I was having an STN, RTN, you know, event with my SPS. So I treated it because I thought I had a bacterial infection and I did an aquabiomics test, but I lost count in terms of how many people that reached out to me asking me for that protocol. And, you know, people were just basically wanted a quick hit because they weren't having success or they were losing corals or whatnot. So they just jumped right to that conclusion that they were having a bacterial infection kind of episode. And it could be really anything that was causing the STN, RTN. We all know that. There's just so many variables in play. But I think there's this desire to kind of like attack a problem and hit the problem and solve it without fully understanding what's going on with the tank. And I think that's the mentality sometimes that you see with people that are just coming into the hobby that are on the younger side versus us. I mean, that's just an observation that I have, but you know, I think there is that propensity for people to kind of like just act hastily.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, that's our record for disaster. I mean, one of the things that, you know, that corals don't like is a lot of changes quickly. You know, so even if you've got I don't know, I've had STN and events and people look at my tank, they're like, well, what are you doing? I go, no, I'm doing nothing. It'll go away. You know what I mean? Like I'll lose a couple corals or I fragged a couple things that I'm worried about. The other ones, it'll work itself out. You know, I've never had a full blown thing where my whole tank goes up, you know, but I have had things where something bad happens and I lose a big chunk of things and you know, whatever. You just, I don't know. Eventually I think you just learn to just move on, but making those quick changes can really cause a lot more damage than you're seeing initially.
So, all right, Todd's got a question for you guys. Can you ask them what each of their most humbling experiences were in the hobby? Most humbling experience in the hobby. Who wants to tackle that one first?
None of us.
Yeah, that's one of those things we don't like to talk about. I'll go ahead and start. You know, back in probably 2007, you know, my SPS tank was just blossoming, just full of huge acros. And I was fortunate enough to live here in Southern California and be surrounded by a lot of good SPS keepers that taught me the ropes. So my learning curve was pretty quick. But, you know, it always happens that when everything is going well, what do? You don't do anything. You let it go. And I had an STN event, and I just couldn't stop it. It just kept going and going and going. And I literally wanted to quit the hobby. And my wife stopped me because literally she felt the tank was good for the kids because they would stay in front of the tank and look at the tank all the time. So she was like opposed to me getting out of the hobby. So
how long ago was this, Greg?
It's probably in 2007, I would say. You know, it was just one of those things. She just looked at the tank as part of our family, and she's like, "No, you got to figure this out. You got to figure it out." And that's what I did. I just kept doing the maintenance and staying on it. It eventually stopped. And, you know, the good thing about me or most of us is we start off with corals, but as they get too big, you either got to remove stuff or they just are going to die. So I just had more space and more coral. You know, the corals just continued to grow and grow and grow, and eventually, you know, a couple of years later, it looked like I didn't have an event at all. You know, it grows in, but it's humbling because, you know, we as hobbyists, we're always looking for a reason for our failures because we want somebody else to blame other than ourselves. That's just reality. So you will see people have a failure and they'll blame a company, or they'll blame a product, or they'll blame the environment. And I'm just like, hey man, stuff happens. That's why I'm in this hobby, because the whole thing, we're trying to cheat death, because we all know as SPS keepers, you can lose it all in one night.
Yep.
That is so true.
You can lose it all in one night. I'm in it for the challenge. You know, I'm trying to avoid that one night. All right, don't tell me I'm the only one.
Come on, Steve.
Everybody's got to answer
Come on,
that
Steve.
question.
You're saying very quiet, Steve.
Yeah, well, he's bringing up memories I tried to block out. So spent a decade blocking it out, but okay, here goes. The tank behind me is my 850-gallon tank. And one day I came out, or one morning I came out for whatever reason, maybe something spawned or whatever. Skimmer went nuts, and it drained my entire sump, which was, 200 gallons of water in there. So it's like, the tank is fine. It doesn't, it was just the sump area, but that's a lot. That's a good portion of the tank water. It's like, okay, it's going to take me a day and a half, 2 days to make up that much water. What am I going to do? I have to get it back online because that's where the heater and chiller and everything else are, being effective on the tank. What am I going to do? So I go, okay, well, we have pretty good water quality here in Portland. Comes in at about 20 parts per million, even out of the tap. Let's just make up some regular water. And I have dechlorinator in here. I have an old bottle of whatever it was, dechlorinator in there. I will just mix it up and add that, which I did. And the next day, the entire tank was crashed. So obviously there was some additive that my RODI would have taken out of the city water, or the dechlorinator was so out of, was so old that it was ineffective. But obviously that water change wiped out the tank. So that everything, all the SPS went down, and a good portion of the LPS went down, and that was a big change. It's after that, it's like, hey, I wonder how cold water tanks work.
Let me try that.
Let me try that. So I should have, that was just stupidity on my part. I'm not going to blame it on a expired bottle or city water. I should have just left the regular 850 gallons circulate within itself and take the day and a half to mix up the water properly. So that was my brain fart. I was trying to solve the problem now instead of thinking straight, and I wiped it out. Thanks, Keith, for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
No, you gotta.
So I got two then. So I've got one, which is,
you gotta blame Todd from Champion. That was the one that brought the question up, Steve.
that's fine. There was I think it was Ron Sheemick who put an article about different salt, and there was like a couple of brands that nobody really had heard of.
Crystal Sea.
Yep. So I was one of the people who was like, man, I gotta try this salt. This thing is the best. I put it in, and that, like, things just so quickly that the tank went downhill, and I had RTN on a ton of corals. I lost a lot of things for that, and that was like my first big humbling experience, that like, don't follow trends and don't be the ones who's the trendsetter. Wait for somebody else to make those mistakes and learn from them, and then do it there. I mean, and that was like the first major faux pas that I remember, and there have been others since then, but man, that was a big one because that hit a lot of people, and I was one of them, and and then the other one was, it really was just, so I had this coral, and I got it from the ocean, and this was 2002, and it was frag, and I loved it. And one day, poof, the whole thing just like RTN, gone. And I was like, I remember waking up in the morning and being like, oh my God. I was like, I think I'm going to cry. Like, I'm this upset about this coral. You know, and that was really like, you know, I remember just being like so proud of like how well that was looking and white polyps and green and purple. And this is like 2002, you know what I mean? So it's crazy. And it just like that RTNs on me. And it was like, oh my God. And then from there, it like hardened me where I was like, all right, you know, this could happen at any time period. So, you know, anything you're getting from somebody, you're paying for something, you know that at any one time it could just RTN on you and die. Yeah.
I never had any humbling experience. I've been perfect from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right on.
You know, I mean,
Fist
you
bump
talk
to that.
about
Means you're due.
You know, you talk about making newbie mistakes after you've been in the hobby and you think you know it all, and that's what we're saying. You know, it's like I had to go to Europe in emergency, and what can go wrong is going to go wrong the day before that I am going away. My computer, my GHL dozer is crapped out. My computer crapped out. I'm switching everything to the Apex, and I thought I had it all covered. And I'm telling my son, you're going to dose this, and you're going to dose this, and you're going to dose this, totally forgetting that the dozer was dosing it on top of that. And I come back, I couldn't see through the glass, and all my acros are like alive, but they're beyond pissed, right? So to top off everything, what happens? My chiller craps out. I come down, and my tank is basically one white cloud. I'm like, my tank is done. Half the fish are not even anywhere to be seen. And I thought my tank crashed. I mean, and now I'm panicking, you know, doing water changes and doing all kind of things, aerating, throwing, you know, air stones. And while I'm trying to fix the chiller, putting ice in bags in the water to bring the temperature down. And the humbling part is that, you know, I made a newbie mistake, that I was overdosing. What, you know, yes, I can find the excuse that I was on a panic mode running, you know, after you go to Europe and so on and so forth, and my head was somewhere else. But I mean, I have a list of things that I've done wrong on my own. You know, I mean, you could call it not quarantining, you know, for argument's sake. It will humble you at some point because you think that you dipped it and you're good. So, yeah. Oh, we could talk all night about these things.
Yeah, well, we have a name for it now. It's called Sanjade.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Poor Sanjay.
I'll add my most humbling moment. Well, it was, I mean, I've had many humbling moments in the hobby, you know, but it was a stupid newbie mistake. It was early on in my reef keeping career, and I was at the local fish store admiring the beautiful display tank, SPS dominant display tank, and talking to the owner, and I was asking him, you know, some questions, and he kind of like lifted up it was a canopy, so he lifted up the front of the canopy so I could see what the lighting and all that sort of thing, and you know, he had middle halide lighting at the time, and I noticed that he didn't have any glass lenses on the halide fixtures. I'm like, oh, why are you doing that? You know, aren't you afraid that you'll get some salt splash or water splash on the bulbs, and it could potentially, you know, crack a bulb and cause major issues? Like, I just want to get, you know, more par. I want to get higher light penetration to the corals. And so I was thinking, I was like, that's a interesting idea. I want to, you know, higher par. I want to get more light penetration. All right, so that's going to help my corals. All right, so I went back and I removed the lenses from my middle halide fixture. But what I didn't realize was I was running double-ended HQI middle halide bulbs.
Oh, he fried the tank.
which has some serious. There's no UV protection on those lenses. So as soon as I took the UV protected lenses, slid the glass lenses off those fixtures, that fixture, yes, everything was
Wow.
fried, including some of the fish. I mean, some of the fish got some serious sunburn, and I lost fish. So that was a friggin' mess. But you know what? That was a newbie mistake. Pretty stupid when you look back on it. But yeah, that was my story.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we didn't have so much of message boards back then for other people that we knew things that people did. So we
No.
all had to learn the same lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't run glass on mine, but I didn't have double-ended. I just had single-ended.
Single-ended.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
single-end bulbs have UV protected
Oh
glass.
yeah, I didn't run. I ran just the bulbs and a reflector for years and years. You know, but I
Me
also would say that never make a change a week or two before you're going to go on vacation. Like that should be the golden rule, that you should like never make a change. Like I've now pushed it to 2 weeks before I go somewhere. I won't make any changes, but I used to be at least a week, because so many times, you know, you're doing something that morning of, or the before, you know, the day before, and then you go away and there's a problem just because of something you put in, you plumbed something in, or you changed some media out, or you did something.
Yep.
Never do that.
I always like buck that trend, you know, because I was doing a lot of traveling this summer and fall. So, you know, I always try to like avoid big maintenance things before I go away, like pump maintenance or anything that takes a lot of time to do and is like very, you know, you're pulling equipment apart the day or two before you're leaving. I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I end up kind of like doing it.
It'll be a humbling experience if
I
it
know,
happens to you.
man. I'm gonna get burned.
Especially
these
skimmer
days.
maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, you haven't cleaned your skimmer in a long while, and you're like, you know what? I'm leaving. I better clean it. I'm here to tell you, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Stay dirty. Wait till you come home.
Yeah, there are a lot of tripwires out there. So, all right, there's so many different topics, guys, that we could talk about. But I think you know, one thing that I always find interesting is how people you know, like to start a reef tank, and it's you know, it's changed over time. Hold it. Do we have Dong back with us? Dong, can you hear us?
Oh,
Oh, hi.
how you doing?
Well,
I was about to read the message, Dong, that you texted me. You said that the network is down for the town. I was like, that's not a good thing. to
yeah.
happen.
So I'm on cellular right now. Yeah,
Well,
finally.
You look
Yeah.
and sound good.
Okay. Well, then we'll just make do with that.
But you look like you've been through hell.
Oh yeah, I actually drove out to find a spot have signal, but none of this place has a signal because
boy.
we are in a natural reserve.
Oh, the
Yeah, I
okay.
drive around for like several miles, but there is no better signal than here. So basically, the whole house, it's all the device all turn off, and somehow that we get a little bit of signal here. So yeah, if I disappear for no reason, just
Don, you know what? You know, I think the blame is your Windows laptop. That new Windows laptop brought the town network down. I think that's what happened.
it could be because that laptop have no connection right now, sitting there like a brick.
And the new phone, the combination of the new laptop and new phone put so much pressure on the town
Uh-oh.
network that it crashed it. That
Yep.
would be my theory. Well, Don, we were kind
Yeah,
of
it's not working.
yeah. We glad you were able to finally join us. We've been talking a lot about humbling experiences and keeping it simple. So I was going to get into the topic of starting a reef tank and how everybody likes to start a reef tank. So I know there's a lot of different ways to do that, but I don't know. Joe Muscat, man, how do you like to start a reef tank?
Live rock. I don't believe in this fake crap.
Uh oh,
nowadays.
we got a problem here with Greg.
So,
Can't buy it
you know,
anymore.
live rock, sand bed. I basically go against all the rules of today. Still back to my old 18-year-old sand bed, still working for me. And if you can, if you can get maybe a piece of, established live rock from a friend that had a established reef to, introduce the bacteria into the new system. And basically, as far as mechanicals, keep it simple, skimmer, sock, or the roller, thing that Steve was saying, which I agree. I wish I had the room for it, but I don't. And good lighting. I mean, I'm still an old school guy running halides and T5s, which I'm still not sold on the LEDs. I'm not saying that they're not good. And be patient and cycle it slowly and cycle it properly. Don't rush things. Don't try to add too many things and bottles in there because you think that it's going to be, faster. It might be faster on a test kit, but as far as, saturation and things like that, it's going to take time,
I'm going to ask everybody this question: fish or corals first?
My theory about that is, knowing what I know today to what I didn't know then. Obviously, back then, I think it would have been fish. Now, yes. If you look at how we reef and SPSs, right? What is the biggest dilemma that we constantly fight is nutrients, right? And where is nutrients coming from? So if you find the balance of introducing coral and fish enough, in a balance together, you might not have that problem build up that now you're chasing to bring them down, right? So if I knew what I know, today I would basically add, let's say, 2 fish with 4 corals, and feed the fish and watch my nutrients balance. You'll never have a problem with nutrients, but that's my theory and opinion. I mean, I have a good friend of mine where he have an SPS tank with no fish whatsoever. I mean, the colors that this guy pulls, he's dosing in organics, nitrates and phosphates, obviously. And the color on the corals, the growth, and the vibrancy of it is better than mine, So that's the tank that's being successful based with everything in organic, in theory, right? So if you do it with fish, now you're feeding the fish poop, feeding this and feeding your corals, but you're dealing with nutrients. And if your nutrients are now going to go up and down, again, you're not staying at a nice level where there are days that your corals could look better than others, So that's my theory about fish or coral.
Joe Berger, you just you're starting a new tank right now.
Starting a new tank right now. I'm in the middle of cycling it. So, what would I do differently? It's dry rock and dry sand, but you can't get live rock like the way I used to be able to get live rock. They used to have it delivered to the airport, run over to the airport, pick it all up, put it in your tank, and you're all set. And you can't get it, or the rock that you can get is so expensive that it's just I'm not paying $20-something a pound.
It's crazy money.
Yeah, to put into for rock to put into my tank. When I first put my tank up like 20 years ago, the first one, I think I paid shipped like all inclusive pricing. It was like $2.78 is I think how much it came to. For live rock, like live Fiji and live Tonga. So this time I tried to get live rock. I tried to get all that, and I used dry sand and dry rock, and cycled it with, some turbo start and, let it go. I mean, I was able to save like 50 gallons of water from my old tank. I just kept it in the sump because my sump is in the basement. And when I took my old tank down, it was like 4 months before I could get the new one. And I just kept it circulating there. And I was able to go and get some live rock, but like I called like 10 local fish stores. So I found some guy who had like 20 pounds. He's like, yeah, and it was really just rock that he'd had for a long time. So I picked that up and put that in the tank too. But no, cycling it, that way. And it's a different beast than it was when we first did it a long time ago, because it just doesn't cycle the same way. I've got diatoms, not that bad, but holy, did I get here, I'll show you this thing. This is my tank like a week and a half ago. And this is like phytoplankton. It just went out of control. It just it's almost completely clear now. But for like a week and a half, that's what was going on. And I was like, when that happened, I was like, all right, whatever. I picked up pods. I threw pods in there. Anything I could get from somebody else. I was like, all the little things that I knew would eat phytoplankton and survive in there, I just started throwing them in there. I ended up checking like phosphates, which I never would care about in the beginning of cycling a tank, making sure they don't bottom out so that the diatoms get a chance to take over and everything. So it's just different, but like Joe was saying before, don't go fast. I'm anticipating at least probably, a total of 3 months before I put anything other than, nails and pods and stuff like that in the tank. I did it. That's what I used to do in the past. And I think that that slow and steady helps build up the biofilter that you need in your tank. And I think that's one of the things that keeps it going. You start slow with some fish, make sure it all works, and from there start adding it in. But once you've got a strong biofilter, then your tank is like rock solid. So, but it takes a while to get there. I think that, people try to cycle their tank and get everything going in a couple of weeks and start doing everything from there, and wonder why, a couple of months or a year down the line, they start having problems. I think it's just, this is one of the hobbies that, and especially the beginning, that just takes a while to start with. You can't really rush it. Everybody wants to, but I think better things happen if you can wait it out.
What about you, Greg?
So when it comes to starting up a tank, I always like to take things slow. It's going to be a long while before I start adding livestock. Other than cleanup crew, I may add a fish or two, but it's going to be a tang. It's going to be a worker, a fish that is working. I like to get ahead of all of the ugly stage.
He's back.
I like to add, snails, hermit crabs, pods, all of that stuff near the beginning. And I'm constantly replenishing throughout the process before I even start putting corals in. I want to, I'm going to seed the tank with coral and algae, from somebody else's tank. And this is how I did my big tank. I mean, it was all dry rock. There was no live rock at all put in that tank, and I didn't have an ugly stage. My rocks were nice and clean. I waited until I saw the first signs of coral and algae before I felt I was ready to put SPS in the tank. Me being an SPS keeper, I think that's an important thing to do, is to make sure that you can support coral and algae. I think that's a good telltale sign that your tank's matured enough. So,
100%.
That's the way I do it. And now I have a little 25 gallon. I started it with the Marco Live Rock. That stuff's like $16 a pound. It's been in the ocean for 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Probably the best live rock I've ever used.
Yeah, but you got a tank that's only, what did you say, 40 gallon?
There's 25.
25. Even
Yeah, it's 3 pieces.
Who cares? It's only, even if it's 16. I got 300-gallon tank. That's why
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
But I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, the way it came, it didn't come like the old live rock. I mean, this stuff you put in the tank and it's already cured. There's zero die off. It doesn't stink. It had I ended up with an anemone that is huge now. You know, it was a hitchhiker.
That's cool.
You know, there were urchins and things like that. So, I mean, it was probably the most live rock I've ever experienced. So, that's an option for people. It's not $30 a pound. It's, I think, $16-17 a pound, includes shipping. I mean, that's about, I think as far as live rock goes, to me, that's probably the best we can do at the moment. So
Sounds like great stuff.
yeah, it is. It's a good product, but I can do it either way. But even so, I'm always going to take it slow, because I think that, if you notice lots of people who sell corals and they have these coral flats, it's easy to keep the color in coral flats. It is not easy to keep it in a display, because we want to add fish, and fish complicate nutrients. They just add to the problem. So if you want beautiful corals and limit how many fish you put in the tank, but yeah, I'm not going to do that, and I don't think most everybody out there is going to do that. They got in this hobby most likely because of fish, and they're going to stay with having a lot of fish if it's a display.
I would challenge that a little bit. What you just said on the amount of fish, because I used to always be the guy who was like, just a couple fish, to make my wife happy, and then I'll have no other fish in the tank. And the last time I had the tank, I changed my philosophy from back in like 2010 or so. It was like, not from no nutrients, but I think I should have some. I think I should have some night, some N and P in there. And I started dosing it, and I was like, why am I dosing nitrogen? Why don't I just get more fish? And I eventually had like 73 fish in that tank, and they were all small. Like Keith, you were at my house. I think when I had tons of fish, I had all those anthias and everything else like that in there, and like 21 anthias, but they were like little small anthias. And I thought my coloration was great, and it changed my opinion on being able to get like depth in colors and corals. And I didn't have to dose anything, and I just kept doing it that way until I found like an equilibrium between obviously not too much fish and not too much pollution in the tank. But I used to always be that person who was saying 0 or low nutrients and a little bit of fish, and I changed my tune, and I think having a decent amount of fish adds a lot to the tank. I think it gives a lot of color that you see in corals that you wouldn't otherwise see, and I think it makes the overall tank a little bit more stable. I don't know why I would say that, but it seemed that I had an easier time of things with that much fish in there. But no, I'm a big proponent of not going crazy, because you have to pay attention to like your nutrients and making sure that they're not getting out of control. But from where I was back 15 20 years ago to where I am now, I would put a decent amount of fish in there. I mean, I like smaller fish, and I never used to really care about the fish, but I liked having a lot of movement inside the in the tank when you were looking at it. But I'm pro fish now.
Well, from what we've all kind of gone through the same thing, and obviously we had the advantage back in the day of basically affordable live rock from all over the South Pacific. So we don't have that. So when I came back in 2020, I had a choice to make too, going through there. There is a workaround going that we can do with right now, and that's live sand out of the Caribbean. You can go to Tampa Bay and get live sand, and you are going to have an aquabiomics system. You can have an aquabiomics test and verify what's going on. So that's how I started mine, although I did also have some KP Aquatic live rock in there, but I used some dry for the shape that I wanted to create the aquascaping, and I used some Puget Sound rock that I had out of my cold water tank. So I had multiples in my current tank then, but live sand is what I'm banking on. Enough so that about twice a year I replace about 10 pounds just to change the aquabiomics
Really?
makeup, in my tank right now. And I can see the difference with with Eli and Andy on my aquabiomics tests, how that changes the microbiome of the whole system. When I do that, it goes to a much better diversity, balance, everything goes up. Not only that, but if I can use it as a kind of a guide to see any nasties that show up. I had Arcobacter show up on one of the reports, one at a very low level. It hadn't started RTNing or STNing events, but it's enough that made me take action. I took action on that with, like you said, Keith, OA, oxalinic acid. Next test, clear. Put in some live sand, reestablish the microbiome, you're good to go. So the surface area on the is so much more than what's on the rock that we did back in the old day. But back then, hell, we used to use Southdown sand and everything else. But back in the day,
I had a half bag of Southdown sand I found when I was clearing things out.
Well, listen, the old didn't have that. But right now, live sand's kind of a workaround. If you're doing it for a microbiome, that's a workaround.
Steve, are you worried about introducing pathogens though when you do that refresh with the live sand?
Absolutely, it's very possible. However, now those outfits are now going through Eli and testing their sand.
Wow.
So that's the latest that I've heard. So that always has been, because there's a risk in everything we do. We're never going to be, risk free. We just have to pick our poison.
Yeah, mitigate the risk.
So I just recently, a couple months ago, pulled out a big old, more longer than that, 18-inch fireworm, Caribbean fireworm. I wonder where that came from. Either it came from the KP Aquatics or the live sand, and grew up in the tank, probably from the initial. And I pulled him out. He was 18 inches long, about an inch and a half wide. He was beautiful, but it's just like, I think you got to go. So we always run that risk. We did back in the day with our live rock. So.
Dong, how would you start a display tank these days, Dong? Or how would you
live rock?
Live rock.
Yeah, live rock, definitely live rock. The dry rock is not working because I have been consulting with many of my customers. Many of them actually starting their new tank. It's a nightmare for all this dry rock, and this cyano phase is never end. It just keep on going and going and going. So actually, I have a 120-gallon tank filled with rock rubbles. The rock rubbles are like 10 years old, something like that. I just give them rubbles, and that actually slowly solved their problem. So definitely live rock. I don't mind the fireworm. I pull one out once too. He's about 2 feet long. The thing is that
Oh, really?
Yes, that's several years ago, and I found out my coral disappearing, especially some Recordia was just gone.
Yeah.
And one night I was looking at night, shining a flashlight in the tank, and see a shadow come up, and then go to a small polyp, whoop.
Yeah.
And the next day I ran to some work, and I can see the worm coming from one hole to the other rock. And keep going. Oh my God, I got to remove it. So when I take him out, and then he was broken into 2 pieces. Oh, it's so gross. But I will take 10 this kind of worm over dry rock. Seriously, I don't mind those worms. I like the live rock. Also, you can steal some pieces from your fellow reefers. I can drive over
There
to
you
Keys
go.
and just
Get some live rock rubble.
Yep.
I mean, I'll add my 2 cents to this thing. I think if there was an affordable option for live rock, I would probably go that route. The last tank that I started was my Peninsula tank, and I seeded it with 100 pounds of KP Aquatics live rock. And I think at the time when I started that tank 5 years ago or something like that, it cost me $800 to get the stuff shipped to me. And that was shipped. The rock was submerged in water. So it came in bags with water, and serpent stars came in on that rock, and I still have some of those. They're sea monsters now, you know. So that was pretty cool. But that tank was cycled and ready to go in a week, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very, very quick. But I wouldn't hesitate to use the Marco Live Rock, and I also wouldn't hesitate to start a dry rock tank as long as I can find a buddy is get some rubble or some rock from a buddy to put in the sump to do that. So I'm more open minded these days about using dry rock versus just solely live rock. But you got to kind of like roll with what we've got in terms of the marketplace, right?
Yep.
For sure. I think in the end, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. My tank was set up with dry rock. I never experienced an issue. I will tell you that when I posted I was doing this build on the forums, I was told that I was going to run into all these issues, and I said, no, I'm not, and I didn't. So, I think what we need to do is, if you want to start a tank with dry rock, you talk to somebody who's been successful doing it instead of people who have been unsuccessfully doing it.
Yeah.
And it's same with live rock. I mean, just give it a try. It'll work. You may have to be a little more patient, though.
Be patient. That's it.
Yep.
This comment reminds me of what did come with my KP Aquatics live rock. I did get a couple of mantis shrimp hitchhiking on that stuff.
Listen, I had to deal with a 3-foot bobbit worm.
Mine was 6 foot.
6 foot.
Yeah, mine was
Holy
closer
shit.
to 5.
I stretched it out to as bigger than my truck.
Yeah.
How did you?
I remember
Steve,
those pictures.
How did you capture the 6 foot bobbit worm?
Well, it was in the tank behind me, and one night, just like Dong said, you're out there looking through the night through a hole in there, and you're suddenly seeing like a worm picture show, and the worm just keeps going and going and going. It's like, is he circling around? How long is this thing? So you knew he's in there. Where he was living in my old system, the one behind my tank, the rock was all supported by a PVC structure. And he was living inside the PVC structure. And it was actually on this side of there. So I had to remove every rock and coral off that side, take the structure out, take that out onto the garage floor and disassemble it. And he was in there. So all 6 feet of them wrapped up all in that into that PVC. And that's how I got him out, and got him out whole. So
I'd be having nightmares for a long time after seeing one of those things.
I thought that, when Carroll was saying earlier in the show that, he thought that the end of the tank was, and his wife said no, the same thing happened to me. I mean, as Steve is saying, where was mine hanging? In the bottom piece of big rock that's holding the whole tank.
the thing up.
The whole tank. So to get that rock out, you're not going to catch him. He used to go, my tank is 5 feet. I mean, I've seen him. And by the way, from what I know about bobbit worms is that they never let loose of the hole they're in with their tail. So they basically, if you see him on the other side of the tank, he is still holding on to that spot on the other side of the tank.
That's creepy.
Okay. So I used to see him on the left side of the tank. I used to watch him at night with a red flashlight munching on the overflow box on the top. I don't know how many Lenardi rashes I bought that I never saw again. So I was like, until one time my in-laws were over, and we're looking at the tank, and I'm looking at a hole, and I see his spikes. That's how I realized I have something.
Yeah.
I saw the spikes.
You got a situation.
And I'm like, I came down that night at 4 a.m, and there he is, all perched out, having fun when I'm asleep. And I told my wife, I have a problem. And when I showed her a video, because I took a video in the dark, she goes, "Oh my God, what about if he comes out of the tank? What are we gonna do?
Down the hall.
You know. So I had to dismantle basically the whole tank to get this rock with him in it. And I'm a person that I'm not afraid of much of anything, but I can't see any snakes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling this rock out, and I'm like, you better don't come out. You better don't come out. And as soon as I pull it out of the water, he shoots out from both sides.
Wow.
And snaps in half, you know. And I didn't think I was gonna put the tank back together. And you know, my son and my wife.
He snapped in half in the water or out of the water?
No, outside. You know, as I'm putting it in a bin, because that's what they do to escape. And if they snap in half, now you have two. If they snap in half in your tank, they will, they'll regrow ahead, and you'll get two bobber worms. You know,
man.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Interceptor work on it?
Interceptor? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I mean,
I
interceptor can
intercepted
barely
the hell out of
kill.
my tank, and
It barely kills red bugs and white bugs unless you do it like 5 times. But this sucker was big. You know, I mean, it took me 2 weeks to put the tank back together.
Yeah.
so I got really lucky. You know, mine was probably close in between 4 and 5 feet, and you know, I would see him, you know, at night with the flashlight, and you know, of course, you know, you can't get them, and they're fast too when they retract. So one day, I mean, you know, over time, I just stopped seeing him. And I'm like, I wonder if he died. And then I realized he had gone down the drain and he was in my sump.
Oh my goodness.
And there was a big piece of Marshall Island rock that I had removed. You know, Marshall Island rock is really porous. Lots of places that I had removed from the main system, and I just put it down there. He had basically infested this piece of rock. I grabbed that piece of rock, threw it in the trash. Gone.
You are one lucky man, Craig.
I was lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. What I had to
Keith,
go
those worms are a delicacy in Fiji, so.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, they are.
Wow.
The tail sections, they hunt them at night. That's McDonald's fries to them. So.
All right, what do you guys think about this question from Sebastian? And thanks, Sebastian, for that super chat. Any chances that carbon dosing can boost the biome faster? Carbon dosing. Does anybody has anybody carbon dosed or is carbon dosing? And do you feel like that can potentially be a boost to the microbiome?
I'll say that I don't recommend carbon dosing to anyone anymore, because hey, you know, it can increase the good with the bad.
Yeah.
So just be patient. There's no hurry. Truly.
I used to carbon dose. I've carbon dosed for many years. I had great success. Yes, I do agree with you, Craig, that you could be introducing bad bacteria, possibly, and then you'll deal with if it's RTN or STN. It depends what bacteria you're introducing. So I have been not doing the carbon dosing as I used to, and to your point, Greg, which you're right, I have less issues with corals. But does it speed up the biome? Depends what bacteria. Right? It depends what bacteria you're introducing. I mean, you know, which we don't know what we're introducing. That's the problem. And every bottle is the best, you know, that you buy.
Then what do you think about the tropic marine of a reef? That is a gigantic carbon dosing, because the amount that you put into it is so huge to boost alkalinity. That amount that you add to the tank is more than any other forms of carbon dosing, though. Then what do you think about that additive?
I don't know that it might work for a short period of time. But I think overall, as you build it, you might have different issues. You know, I don't believe one bottle for all. I mean, you know, the Bacto Balance from Tropic Marin, I've dosed it for many years, and I control nutrients with that easily because I don't believe in GFOs and all kind of chemical stuff, carbon, or I don't have any of that. I've never used any of that. I've used it, not I don't say I've never used it, and I needed to get away from it, and because I had problems with that. Every time you change your GFO, you know, you're stripping the water too quick for some reason, and you lose 2 acros, you know, and it worked, but I don't believe that, you know, that one bottle is going to give you long-term success. It might give you short-term success.
I mean, I carbon dosed a million years ago, I think in 2006 with vodka. And I had no problem. I mean, I really had no problems other than it would just bring my NNP down to like 0. And you know, at the time, that's what I was trying to do. And I didn't really have issues from it. I mean, I eventually moved on to other things because I felt it was better not to have those levels that low. But yeah, I mean, in carbon dosing and other products, I would be like, why would you choose vodka again? I would never, you know, I wouldn't try the other ones. I mean, it worked fine for me, and I had very good success with it. But I ultimately wanted to do other things with my tank, and I thought I was able to get better results in other methods. So,
Yeah, I think there's other methods that you can do that carbon dosing is dealing with. And when you're talking about introducing bacteria, I think you probably mean supporting or, you know, changing, not really changing the microbiome so much, but maybe you're supporting areas that you don't want to, like Vibrio or something like that. I don't think you're actually adding something, but so there are just better methods of doing that rather than carbon dosing for what the end product is supposed to be. So
yeah, my main reason for not recommending it is because unlike us, who came up in the day of reading the books and understanding, you know, all the levels of the way a tank cycles and all that stuff, today's reefers aren't learning those details. And I just find that too many of them overdo it, so I just don't recommend it anymore. That's just the way I am, because I feel there's a lot of power in the things that I say, so I try not. I don't want to have that person saying, well, you told me to do this, and now look at my tank. It's like, well, you didn't do it right. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to recommend it anymore.
yeah.
Well, what I recommend,
because of course they always want to blame something or somebody.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's unfortunately, if they're successful, Craig, they were successful on their own. But if they miss out or lose out, it's your fault. That's how it goes. It's all you. I listen to you, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but one thing I believe in, and you know, I believe that my biome and tank, as far as like water clarity and things like that, is growing sponges. So back when I started in at the beginning, I bought few sponges from Steve Tyree back in the day.
Yep.
Okay, and you know, I got tremendous amount of sponges on the underside in the rocks, and I truly believe that it will help with the biome. It helps with the water clarity. I don't know if they filter any nutrients or whatever, but you know, we had a conversation about like yellowing compounds, me and a friend, and I said, look, I'll fill up a bucket of water, you know, in a white bucket, and tell me if it's yellow or if you see any difference between a fresh bucket, you know, from my tank or from my mixed tower. And he couldn't believe how clear it was. So I always wanted to reef the natural way. I don't like adding chemicals, and I would never. I wouldn't sleep for weeks if I was to do, you know, any chemicals in my tank. You know, because you know I don't believe in it. I think nature will take care of itself if you have it balanced properly.
Actually, for sponge, there is scientific study to back it up. So there's a paper published that they were wondering where most the silicate and phosphate goes in the ocean. Then eventually they found out that sponge on the coral reef is the gigantic sink for filter out the phosphate and silicate. Majority of the phosphate actually go to the sponge. So sponge filtration actually is really scientifically back idea. It's a good thing.
I don't add anything for my phosphates whatsoever. So and I feed, pretty good. My tank, like I said, is old. So as far as detritus, same original sand bed. I don't vacuum it. I don't, blow the detritus or whatever. So it got to be going then in my sponges because my phosphates are always at the same level, which is maybe not as low as I would like them. Let's say I'm at 0.07, 0.08. So if I want to bring it down, couple of dots, then I normally do a couple of drops of lanthanum chloride in the skimmer and call it a day.
What would you guys, just changing the topic here, what would you guys say are each of you top 3 most important things to keeping a successful reef tank? Who wants to start with that one?
I'll say stability, water quality, and water movement.
Lighting was not in that list.
No, and I'm a big lighting person, right? I wrote articles on it. I did a lot of stuff, but I feel that you can get a lot of you can get great growth with a variety of lights and really poor light. You know what I mean? Like I've had fantastic frags growing on par that's like 140, 160 down the sand bed with no issues at all. I've had frag tanks that don't have a lot of par in them, and I get good color and I get decent growth and everything else like that. I think that the lighting is for me, I feel it's overstated from what it is. It's very important, but I feel that stability, water quality, and even water movement is more important.
What parameters, Joe, would you say for water quality do you hone in on?
I mean, really for the big things, it's really like, alkalinity is like 7.5 to 8 and calcium, I like 450 to 500 and magnesium, it's, 1450 or so. And all the other parameters are just, you're tweaking things. I feel that too much is said about that. I was a big proponent, I still am, of trace elements and dosing I make all my own solutions, and I take, I would take ICP tests and dose what I feel needs to be in there, but you don't need those to be successful. I think those are like when you're doing great and things are awesome and you're like, man, I really think I'd love to get a little bit more of this color out of this or a little bit more of that. Then trace element is for you. But I don't think it's a necessary thing for your reef tank or even to be successful. Water changes alone, I think you can be pretty successful with.
Mm-hmm.
But I think lighting. This is sort of a change in topic, but I was thinking about when lighting just today in anticipation of us having this conversation here, and I was like, LEDs I think are the the worst thing to happen to the whole market because everybody's LEDs are different. No matter what brand you buy, what you do there, you have your settings different. And everybody, like all of us here grew up with like metal highlights and T5, and it was like, oh, what do you have? I've got, Ushio, and I've got like, these ATIs on there, and everything you could mimic what somebody else had. And now everybody's different. Someone would be like, oh, I've got these LEDs and I've got like heavy blue, or I've got some green in there. But everybody's parameters are a little bit different. And I think it messes everything up because nobody's able to sort of replicate what somebody else has done easily. So everybody's sort of experimenting on their own with their lighting in a way that we never had to do that back. And I think it's a detriment, I think, to the hobby in general. That there's not this standard whatever. You could just put on your tank and be like, I'm running LEDs and it's this. Oh yeah, everybody else uses the same thing too, and that type of stuff. That ability that we had from T5s and metal halides was great, and we don't have that anymore. I think that it causes a lot of problems, with people's tanks, and it causes people like how often do people change out their LED system? It's just ridiculous for the amount of money that it costs and changes that you have to do it. People do it all the time. Where before, the biggest we do would be like, oh, let me try this, Blue Plus T5, or let me try, Aqua Connect, 14K metal highlight bulb or something like that. So yeah, LED lighting's not in my top three.
The other Joe.
I'm pretty much in the same agreement as Joe. I mean, I wish there were 4 because I think, lighting is important. And to Joe's point, like I said, I'm still halides and T5s, and I think LEDs can work if you can, dial it to the right spectrum as what, let's say, a halide would give you, but stop futzing around, because every time you change the setting on an LED, you're pissing off the coral, and I think, I've seen very successful tanks with just LED lights, set them, let them do their thing and forget about it, but if you are going to go and see Greg's tank and say, wow, I like his spectrum, I want to change it, and he got the same light, and you start changing it, be aware that your corals are going to be pissed off for maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month. So the success is to halide, besides the UV, which LED is not giving you, is that you couldn't change it. You turn it on, you turn it off. But again, stability is very important. Flow, depending if you are doing an SPS tank, you definitely need to have good flow. And that's basically it. But stability, discipline goes with stability, because you need to have discipline. There's not much more to success. Honestly.
Greg.
All right, so my 3, definitely flow. I think flow is underrated for a lot of people. A lot of people, in my opinion, don't have enough flow. I think that's some place where a lot of people really skimp, because the pumps can get expensive. Water quality, and what I mean by that is, I like to put the biggest skimmer I can fit in the sump. Period. I'd rather have that additional power for an event where I'll need it than to not have it and need it. So water quality, and the other one is patience. A good reef isn't built in a day, but you certainly can lose a good reef in a day. So now, I do love stability as well, but we're limited to 3. And as far as lighting goes, corals don't have legs. That means they can adapt. So just set it and forget it. If you have LEDs, I think the biggest enemy to people running LEDs is their own tinkering self. And that's why I think people loved Kessels, because there was such a limit to your tinkering, because it only had, you could turn it towards blue or turn it towards white, but realistically, set it on a spectrum that other people have used with success, and just leave it. The corals will adapt. They will.
And use a spectrum that you dig, right?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point, because if you don't like the spectrum, you certainly won't keep it.
Yeah.
And every time you change it, those corals are going to go through an acclimation process. So it's like you get somebody who says, oh, well, what's your spectrum? And they change theirs to that. And then it doesn't grow for a month. And they're like, oh, well, that spectrum didn't work for me. I'm going to switch back. And then it still doesn't grow for a month because the coral is adapting. It's now like, okay, things have changed. Let me gear myself to accept this light, and you just mess when you tinker with things, you mess with stability.
I used to tell people if you make a change, you got to wait 3 months before you're gonna see whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So you better really think about that change because 3 months.
Yeah.
Steve, what do you think, man?
Well, everything that people said here is all very true, but you're missing one of the point. What I think is the most important point, and that's matching these parameters to what you're trying to keep. Lighting, not necessarily important. It depends what you're keeping. I could light my cold water tank with a candle. It requires no light, or a non-photosynthetic tank. So matching. As for flow, again, what are you keeping that requires what flow? One commonality is nutrient export. Whether it's a cold water tank, a non-photosynthetic tank, a reef tank, whatever, those still comes into play. You have to deal with nutrient export through various means. But all those other parameters that everyone's listing, it's kind of a function. What are you trying to keep? We all want to keep the kitchen sink, and that always isn't possible. It's easier with larger tanks because we've all been there. You create micro habitats within your tank through your aquascaping or flow, but not everything likes lots of flow. Other things like no calm water at all. So you need to think about matching what you want to keep to these other parameters.
I
Don,
only have one.
Yeah, what was yours, Don?
Just one only. Think about that. I found out that many reefers, they need to consider when they are very busy what they can do to maintain the tank. So the long-term stability, actually that contributed to long-term stability. For example, so if I decided to add 30 different bottles every day in my tank, I need to think about, what happens if I have a busy day? Can I keep up with it? What happens if I go on vacation? What happens if my life has other priorities shows up? I maybe have a baby or maybe got a new puppy. And then you still need to be able to do the same thing or similar thing to your reef tank to upkeep it. So just have to keep it simple. Think about that. Keep it as simple as what you can do at your busiest day. And pick a method that is very simple that you can handle. Think about the downtime. Think about your new puppy, a new baby, or you get married. Yeah, so I think that's very important to choose a method to maintain the tank. I have seen so many tanks that the people get out of the hobby because they just cannot do what they were planning to do. The method they use to maintain their reefing methods. I think that's pretty the human factor.
Yeah, life gets busy sometimes, and if you're not, if you just can't, if you've got a tank that needs so much babysitting that you can't just go away and do things, take care of life for a while, you're going to have problems eventually. Yeah.
I mean, I'll add my three, and I would say top for me, and this is an SPS dominant tank, so I'm not talking about a mixed reef or a lot of LPS.
Yeah, I only talk about SPS too.
Yeah, so for me, it's SPS dominant. I'd say good, strong, random circulation is
noses in the air.
What's that?
All these noses stuck up high in the
Oh
air.
yeah.
That, unfortunately, that's the way my brain always works.
That's all I know how to keep. So
yeah,
I kill everything else. For me, I think number one is good, strong, random flow circulation. Probably tops my list. And I think, lighting, and I agree with everybody in terms of, I don't think it matters too much in terms of what kind of, lighting you're using. I used to be a big metal halide guy. Now I'm pretty much all LEDs except for one tank, frag tank. But I think as long as you have some good, strong par for SPS, that's important. I like to keep a spectrum that mimics metal halides, 400 watt, 20K metal halides for my LEDs. So that's what I use for the spectrum. But I think the third thing for me is, and I think we've all talked about this, is like keeping the hands out of the tank, just almost like forgetting about the tank in some sense, in terms of, it's like, just stop fussing, and I think we've kind of like hinted around that, all of us, but just really leave it alone and let Mother Nature do her thing. I've seen like some amazing things happen in my tanks when I just, I'm doing my maintenance, I'm paying attention to the tanks, but I'm not going in there and moving things around. I'm not messing with things. So I think that's speaks to some simplicity and just really letting things work themselves out. So,
yeah, simplicity really is the key.
Yeah, the more you tinker, I think the worse it potentially can have a negative effect. Dong, I mean, since you missed a lot of the show, I know you had some questions. Did you want to get any
Yeah,
topics?
definitely.
Yeah, make up for some lost time.
Yep, thank you. Actually, I watch all of yours, all the available YouTube videos. That for all our guests that come up with some questions. Actually for Joe Burger. So yep. In one of your video, you mentioned that you dose coral food 2 hours before light off. Is that what you're doing
I
normally?
don't do that anymore. So that was that's a long time ago when I was doing that. That was rotifers.
Oh boy.
I was at the time I was cultivating phytoplankton, which I was amazed at, like, oh, it's back in style again. Like, everybody's getting phytoplankton now. But I was cultivating phytoplankton back in like 2004 or 5, like back then, and I was dosing and then I was using the phytoplankton to feed rotifers. So I had like a 10-gallon or a 5-gallon tank, and rotifers, man, they just multiply like crazy, and I would just dump like 4 or 5 gallons through a sieve, and then dump that into the tank, and I thought that did great. I mean, I did that for a couple of years, I mean, a number of years, and I thought that the tank was very healthy during that time period. I think a lot of people at the time were telling me rotifers are too big, the aquas won't eat them. I thought they did a good job with it. I would absolutely recommend doing that. I just I experiment a lot, so I think I just tried other things, and I didn't notice, like, I thought I had great Polyp extension. I had less incidences, I thought, of RTN. I thought my corals were very healthy. I got good color at the time too. I just I think it just I did it for years, and I think just eventually, like you were just saying, like, you want to be able to do things and not have to be a slave to your tank. And when I had like 4 or 5 bottles of phytoplankton on the wall going, and a tank below it of rotifers, of which you've got to rotate things every couple of days, and rotifers will just crash on you very quickly if they're not being fed a healthy supply of phytoplankton a lot. And I think it was just after a number of years, I was just like, all right, I'm done with this. Let me try other things to do and everything else like that. And I think that, you've got other types of flurries that you can try, and I tried all that stuff. But yeah,
are you still feeding the tank?
Well, right now I don't have a tank at all, so I'm putting up a new tank. Yeah, you missed that before. I'm starting a new tank right now. But I the last few years I was not target feeding or doing any specific feeding for Acropora at all. I mean, I was saying before, I've had a lot of fish. I had like 70 fish in my tank. They were all small fish, but I had a lot of fish. So it was sort of like, my thoughts were, that the poo from the fish and me feeding everything to the fish all the time was more than enough things in the water column for all those acros to be to get fed, and that was sort of like what I moved to. It was easier to do.
So I actually have a question for all the guests, and do you really think that the SPS like Aquapora they will eat those like the powder coral food, or what do you think? Is that a liquid coral food better for SPS, or do you actually very confident to say that actually SPS does eat those powder food? LPS definitely they do. How about acro?
I don't think
I mean,
so.
I've seen
Okay.
acros. I mean, I've seen my acros. Let's say long polyp extensions grab, frozen food.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're grabbing frozen food when I'm, feeding my fish, I would think that they would probably grab some of that powder food. Now, is it making a difference being in a powder form into into a mouth of a coral? I have no idea. I would think that liquid food probably might be better.
Mm-hmm.
I've never target fed any of my corals, and I basically feed my fish, and that's basically most of the time. Although now I'm feeding liquid food through the system that I'm using, so it comes with food for your reef. But other than that, every time I fed a lot of liquid, you could turn into something with cyano and so on and so forth. For some reason, it feeds cyano more than so. You need to find a balance. What you think is working for you, I think.
Greg?
Okay, so I have an interesting feeding regimen that's a little different than most people. My tank is predominantly fed on an auto feeder. I have, if you recall, those old Eheim feeders that rotate.
Yeah.
So I have a Hydros. I use the Hydros one, and I feed a very small amount every hour on the hour.
Oh.
And my
Pellets?
basically, well, yes, but I'm using. So I've been using Reef Nutrition foods for probably over 20 years. It's pretty much the main food that I use and recommend. But I use the TDO pellets, but I don't. I do a combination, and if you guys are on my Instagram, you can find my recipe. But it's a combination of all the small sizes that are smaller, that are extra small and smaller. So there's the A, the B1, B2, and extra small.
Mm-hmm.
I mix those, and then 50%, after I've mixed that, another 50% is Fleischmann's yeast.
Oh, really?
So basically, my belief is that the yeast will feed the microfauna in the tank. In turn, that will feed the SPS. All your little pods. When they're happy and they're multiplying, they're laying they're giving off babies, and you can't see it with your eyes, but the corals can catch it. I mean, I think the corals are opportunistic, and if it's in the tank, and they can fit it in their mouth, they're going to eat it. So that's my theory on it. I don't know if the corals eat yeast. My goal is to increase my pod population, and when I turn on that flashlight, it looks like fleas all over the tank. It's just what it looks like, and it's worked for me. And when I say I'm feeding a small amount, I mean it's a very small amount.
Oh.
It's the smallest opening I can make on that little feeder. So I wouldn't even say it's a quarter of a teaspoon, but it's 10 times a day.
Ah. So Steve, what do you think?
It is very possible that the powdered coral foods are more for us than the corals. We just don't know. I know that I do feed those, but I'm using it more of, hey, my phosphate's getting a little low and I need to jack it a little bit. It means I can feed some inside. going to like it. There is an argument these days going around that if you feed the bacteria of your tank, you are feeding the SPS in your tank.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that would be the thing. So I use it, but I'm using it more of my phosphate's cheating down a little bit. Let's kind of jack it a little bit. Everybody gets a little something. Somebody might like it in there. Somebody's going to get it. So whether that's the coral, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but bacteria eventually will, and that will probably feed the SPS.
That's great. Yeah. So I have a question for everybody. Is do you believe for all these years of reefing, some of the Aquapora only grow well under halide?
I haven't experienced that. Everything I kept back in the day, I keep now.
Okay, so everything
So for
grew
old
under
school corals, then maybe that isn't the case.
What happened to
I
all
haven't
the purple
experienced
monsters?
I don't think they existed much to begin with, except for Keith. He seemed to master it, but eventually caught up with him.
It did.
Yeah, because I lost all my purple monster after I stopped using halide.
Well, that's a big party. Join that party. Everybody.
Yeah, it's just slowly that they just gone.
I think even if you had halides, you eventually lost that purple monster.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was holding on to it for a long time,
more
but
than anything.
What's
I don't
that,
think any coral has died more than that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful piece.
Yeah.
I think years ago it was like something that was a lot more prevalent in the hobby. Is that because of middle halides? I don't know.
Well, because now it doesn't have
it's
10
the
different
same.
shades of whatever. Everybody wants 10 different shades of polyps, so it probably fell out of favor somewhere along the line.
Well, I think blue and purple corals have fallen out of favor just because they don't fluoresce.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
the
how-
fluorescent.
I don't get that, but that's not.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't
How
know.
did we keep the purple monster when we didn't when we knew less, and now we can't keep it alive? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. Actually, recently I just
Because that
retro
was-
back to T5.
You know, that was the coral that grew for us back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't keep it back then, so I
I
can't.
had a
I can't
colony back
complain.
then, and
I got nothing, guys. I killed every one I ever had, so
Yep.
I will say the longest I've had one was under LED.
Huh.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
there
why.
is do you put a high power on your LED? Does your LED set at full blast and have a very high power on it?
Not full blast, because full blast for my tank, I mean, the corals would be well over 1,000 micromoles. So
Yeah.
I'm at about 70%. So
So it's 700 micromole.
650, 700.
So-
at the upper level of the corals.
I just have a suspicion these days that we underlight our Aquapora. Because that, do you think so? Because think about them in the ocean.
I think the light we use is very different than we used to use, and it's heavily blue. It just looks, and it just the Aquapora react differently than they did on their full spectrum highlight. I think that's the main difference.
I can't shop for acros now at Frag Swaps because of all the blue light.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, actually,
That's me.
absolutely
That's
true.
me.
Me too.
When your
So,
yellow. When your yellow tank looks like a purple tank, I think.
Agreed.
Actual example. Remember that last November we went to the Boston's Frag Swap. Yes. At that time, at the end of the day, there's a kid selling a bunch of coral. So he just want to get rid of it. He has a blue LED on. Okay. There's a 2-piece of coral. Looks absolutely horrible. They're gray color. Nobody wanted it for the whole day. So I said, look at it. Wow, the shape of the coral looks very interesting. It resembles something. So I said, well, how much do you want for these 2 coral? He said, how about $25? And you take both because there's no color on it. It looked like crap. That's what he said. I said, sure. I took them home. I put it in my tank. They are Oregon Blue Twerks. Vibrant blue color right away under my T5. Just boom. Yep. But for the whole day, it's sitting on the frag swap under the blue LED. They're gray color.
Can't tell.
Yeah.
Can't tell.
Yep.
Hey, I wanted to kind of ask a question to all you guys that sort of like will come all the way around to how we started this thing, which is a bunch of OG reefers like ourselves talking reef and talking about our 100+ years of experience in the hobby. Not everybody has to answer this question, but if you got any names, I'd be interested to hear them. But who would you say is among the next generation of reef keepers that we should be watching? Who's going to be on this panel in 20 years? Any names you want to throw out there that people that we should be watching, the younger generation of reef keepers?
Well, let me start first. Salem.
That was who I was going to say too. Probably Salem for the
Yeah.
part of the hobby that he is investigating and dealing with. It's kind of the new frontier.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, I think he could take this hobby to the next level, you know, with his education and how he's looking at things. And yeah.
So I'm going to say, to me, Salem's not part of the glory side of the hobby. The stuff he's extremely knowledgeable about is the stuff that we don't see as hobbyists. So some of us may not see the value in, you know, what he's doing and what he's looking into. I always shy away from some of the science side of this hobby because I've gone to a lot of public aquariums and there are very few that I envy their tanks. Very few. And it's because they look at things different. So I don't know that what he's researching will actually apply to what we're doing as hobbyists. But I'm open-minded and I'll try to learn from it. But other than that, I mean, you know, I do agree with you guys that it's the next frontier. You know, this microbiome. It's just not part of my hobby yet. It's there, but it's not something I focus on.
Craig living in the past again.
What was that?
Greg's living in the past. Come on forward.
No, I'll agree with you there. I haven't witnessed the importance of it yet.
Okay.
But I'm still interested in it, and I still look into it.
I think a lot
agree
of
with
deaths in the past are explained by microbiome issues. So.
I agree with Frugal Reefer John Joseph from Carolina Coral Heads. Young guy, kick-ass tanks. Any other names we should be thinking about?
Problem is, we just don't know any.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are
we're old.
Exactly.
You just eventually learn a lot. You get a lot of the same people that you hang out with that you've known for a long time that you sort of like trade secrets with and text with and everything. And you know, right. They've all been around for a while.
I don't know Putang Reef, but I know Pirates Reef.
So Putang is really big on TikTok.
Okay.
He's got tanks everywhere in his house, and are all like amazing tanks. A lot of them are full blown display tanks, not just coral flats. Definitely one to watch. And Sabella, I think Sabella's old school, so I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't look at him as up and coming. He's been around too long.
A long time.
I talked to Leonardo's Reef from Holland, and that guy is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he has the coral farm to show for it.
Yeah.
That definitely is he's Aquapora head. He's 95% Aquapora.
Yeah, I definitely like him. You know, I always feel though people who own a coral farm are different and they're just different, right? I mean, they've got all the time in the world to work on things, work things out. They have flats that they can run things. You know, it's just everything is different than being having a home display case, everything. So I don't know. I always, while I like listening to them and like hearing what they have to say and everything, I mean, for me, it's a grain of salt because that's all they do, you know, and it always doesn't translate to something that you can do at the home because, you know, some of it just is not,
I think Remy's got a great answer. Reef Adams. That's going to be one to watch.
That's all. I think we're a long ways off from that one, though.
Yeah. He's 3 years old, I think.
Yep.
Well, listen, guys. I mean, I think we could just keep going on and on and on and on. There's so many different things to talk about and to tap into the knowledge that we have here tonight. I think this was an amazing panel, an amazing discussion. I felt like I was hanging out with you guys in the living room here, just talking reef and shooting the shit. So I think Dong and I thank you from the bottoms of our hearts for taking the time, and I'm sure everybody out there that was watching appreciate you guys joining and sharing your knowledge.
Sure thing. Anytime.
For sure.
Thank you.
Really love coming on here. And, great honor to be with these four guys. They've all had a big impact on me over the years, especially Steve. Steve, I still remember the first time I met Steve, and he had to educate me that he was not rich, because I said he was rich, because here in California to have 12 400-watt metal halides, you better be rich.
I said the same thing, and then I found out like how cheap electricity was in Oregon.
Exactly. He's like, I only pay like 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we're in the land of hydro. It rains every day up here. Our power's
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. But I still remember that conversation.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
SoCal is still home for me, Greg. So one of these days, my next trip down, I'll have to look you up and see what y'all got going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, all right. Listen, guys, thanks again, Dong, and I really appreciate it. I also want to thank our sponsors one more time. Polo Reef. Make sure to check out Polo Reef's latest YouTube videos. The Polo team takes you on a massive month building a new deep water rockscape, adding giant coral colonies, and welcoming rare fish and clams. ICP test results reveal toxic metals, brown jelly, disease research, and even working with a scientist from Yale. And just as things settle, a rock slide in the 17,000-gallon reef tank shakes things up. Make sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel at Polo Reef for video drop notifications. Champion Lighting and Supply. Todd and the crew will be at the Boston Reefers Frags Giving event on Saturday, November 8th at the Topsfield, Massachusetts Fairgrounds. Go visit them at the show. They'll have guest speakers, including Chris Meckley, a phytoplankton workshop, over 25 coral vendors. I'll be there as a coral vendor, and looking forward to it. Raffles, door prizes, and food trucks. To get more information and to purchase tickets, visit bostonreefers.org. You don't have to be a member to attend, but it doesn't cost a lot to be a member. So while you're at it, just throw them a few bucks to be a member. Big thank you to Paul, who's also the moderator, as well as the president of the Boston Reefer Society. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to this hobby. Also want to let you know that all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. The next Rappin With ReefBum live stream will be on Tuesday, November 18th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's always the third Tuesday of the month. We're going to have Salem Clemens on from Novel Aquatics, Colin Ford from Coral Morphology, and perhaps others on the show to discuss how to prevent coral disease with probiotics.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, be safe and be well. Later.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Peace, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.